Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over the top 10 JDM slash heavy on the slash for the JDM tards Japanese cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now I can't explain how many times I've made one of these JDM slash Japanese cars lists. People are like, bro, that's not JDM. That's why there's a slash and why it says Japanese. Okay? Do you understand? Excellent. Anyways, we're going to be going over my picks for the top 10 JDM slash Japanese cars in Grand Theft Auto Online today. Some of these cars are JDM, some of these cars are just Japanese, and some of them might be both. But what I can tell you is every single one of these cars is based off of something that comes from the country of Japan. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get started with number 10. To start off with number 10, we of course have the Danka RT3000. Now this is this thing's first time being on one of my JDM slash Japanese cars lists, and I honestly don't know why. I really do like this car. I think it looks fantastic, and it certainly has lots of customization. The RT3000 goes for $1.3 million if you have the trade price unlocked, and about $1.7 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. So this thing is a little bit on the expensive side. However, it is a pretty good car, I have to say. It's a lot faster than I ever remembered it being. I haven't driven this car for quite some time, and hopping into it to film this video, I realized that this thing is actually very, very quick. On top of that, it also sounds quite nice. Again, lots and lots of customization, so you can make this thing look however you want to pretty much. You can go for an insane time attack sort of build, you can go for a very street build, you can go for a very bare bones build if you want to. It really doesn't matter, you can go for pretty much anything you want to with the Danka RT3000, and I think that's one of the reasons that this thing is such a good car. The car is based off of the Honda S2000 in real life, which it's a Honda, so it's a Japanese car, so there you go. In case anybody was confused, but I'm sure all the JDM tards already knew that. So that's pretty much it for the Danka RT3000. Let's move on to the next vehicle at number 9. At number 9, we've got the Annis Remus. Now this thing goes for just over $1 million, and for that price, it is a really, really cool car. This vehicle is based off of the Nissan Silvia. Now it could be the S13, it could be the S14, it could not be the S15 because it's not really quite there, but it is certainly a Japanese car. Now for just over $1 million, again with this thing, because it came out with the Tuners DLC, you get lots and lots of customization options that you can do to this thing. The regular Annis Remus, when you see it on the website, you would never imagine that you could make it look anything like my car, for example, or even better than this. But of course, with all the customization options that we got with the Tuners update, you can make this thing look pretty crazy. Now the Remus is actually a pretty quick car. It has very good handling as well. The acceleration is decent too, and the top speed is alright in itself. The Remus is definitely one of my favorite cars from the Tuners DLC for good reason. It is truly a fantastic car. It's also pretty easy to drift this thing as well, so that is another nice feature with it, of course. That's pretty much all I have to say about the Annis Remus. It's a great car. Definitely pick one up if you guys are interested. Next up at number 8, we have the Danka Ballista Kanjo SJ. Now the Ballista Kanjo SJ just got released with the Criminal Enterprises DLC, and I feel like this car was actually meant to come out with the Tuners DLC just based on all the customization that it actually has. This car has lots of different things that you can do to it. It's got just as many customization options as any of the Tuners DLC vehicles, which leads me to believe that this was a car that was supposed to come out with that DLC, of course. A common theme with all the JDM cars is they will have lots and lots of customization, which is of course very nice. We do like to see that. Now the Ballista Kanjo SJ is not my favorite performing vehicle ever. It is front wheel drive, but that's exactly what I kind of expected it to be because it's based off of a Honda Civic. This thing is a little on the expensive side as well. It goes for $1 million if you have the trade price unlocked, and about $1.4 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. Now performance wise, this thing is a little bit worse than the Annis Remus, and it's also a little bit worse than the Danka RT3000. It's not exactly my favorite car to drive, but I do think that because of all the customization that it has, it is a very unique vehicle, and it could be a good vehicle for some of you guys to go ahead and pick up. I think it's a great vehicle for taking to car meets, but beyond that, it's not super great for much else, honestly. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the Danka Ballista Kanjo SJ. Let's move on to number 7. Next up at number 7, we have the Karin 190Z. This thing goes for $900,000, and it's based off of an older Nissan Fairlady, and it's a really, really good looking car in my opinion. On top of that, it also has a very unique interior. Not many other cars in the game share the interior with the 190Z, so that is a pretty unique feature with this car. Now, performance wise, this thing is not the best. It does have pretty good handling, the acceleration is nice, but really where it shines, like most of the other Japanese cars, is in its customization. This thing has so much that you can do to it for being just a regular car that you don't need to take to Benny's or anything like that. It's got quite a few good options, and the livery options are pretty nice too. For example, I've got this orange 190Z livery on it, and I think it looks really, really good. The Karin 190Z is a car that you've probably heard of before, but you might not have actually picked up. And I think it's a good one to pick up. For 900 grand, you really cannot go wrong. It's one of the cheaper cars on this list, actually, so it is kind of a bargain for what you get. That's pretty much it for the Karin 190Z, guys. Let's move on to the next vehicle at number 6. Next up at number 6, we have the Karin Sultan RS. Now this is one of my favorite Benny's cars in the entire game. I think it's actually one of my favorite customizations I've ever done on any car in this game as well. I think that it turned out super, super good. Now the Karin Sultan RS is actually in the supercars category once you upgrade it. It's definitely not going to win you any races in the supercars category, but that's probably not why you're buying this thing. This is one of the most customizable cars in the entire game. It does have all-wheel drive, but it does come at a slight cost. Now the regular Sultan that you're going to need to buy in order to upgrade into the Sultan RS is going to cost you $12,000. I know, a whopping price. However, the upgrade to turn the regular Sultan into the Sultan RS is $800,000. So again, not that expensive, especially in comparison to some of the other cars we've already gone over and some of the cars ahead on this list. But it is a fair chunk of change. However, it is definitely worth spending for the amount of customization you can get with this car. And the performance of this vehicle is actually very, very good. Karin Sultan RS is one of my favorite additions we've ever got into Grand Theft Auto Online, and like I said before, it is one of my favorite customizations that I've ever done on any of my cars. The Sultan RS is pretty much a classic at this point in Grand Theft Auto Online, and if you don't own one, I'll actually be surprised, especially if you're into Japanese and JDM cars already. Now there's a big debate about what the Sultan RS is actually based off of, and I'm not even going to get into that. You guys can argue amongst yourselves in the comments, but please, try to be nice. That's it for the Karin Sultan RS. Let's move on to number 5. Next up, we have another favorite customization of mine, and this is the Mazda Penumbra FF. This was released with the Los Santos Summer Special DLC, and it goes for $1.4 million off of Southern San Andreas Super Autos. This is another car that you can do so much to. It's about as customizable as the Karin Sultan RS, I would say, except for some of the interior options as well as some of the engine bay options. But as far as external parts goes, this thing pretty much has the same amount of customization. On top of that, some of my favorite mods for this thing are the livery options. As you guys can see, I have a cherry blossom livery on my car. I think that it really brings out the car. The Mazda Penumbra FF is a pretty quick car. It's also all-wheel drive, very similar to the Sultan RS. I'd say that the Penumbra FF actually drives very similarly to the Sultan RS. It has about the same acceleration, about the same handling ability, and I think that the top speed is pretty similar as well. The Penumbra FF is one of my favorite JDM cars to drive in GTA, and it forever remains in my JDM garage. Partly because I just love this car, but partly because I love the customization that I did for it. The Penumbra FF is definitely a pretty cool car to own in GTA, and I know it's based off of a Mitsubishi Eclipse, which is technically an American-only car, but it's still, guess what, manufactured by Mitsubishi. So, JDM tards. The Penumbra FF is Japanese. So that's pretty much it for the Penumbra FF. At number 5, let's move on to number 4. Next up at number 4, we have the Karin Sultan RS Classic. Now this is the Sultan RS, but well, the classic version, obviously. It was released with the Tuners DLC, and it goes for $1.3 million with the trade price unlocked to about $1.8 million without the trade price unlocked. Now the Karin Sultan RS Classic is one of the fastest vehicles within the Tuners subcategory in GTA Online, and it's definitely one of the fastest cars from the Tuners DLC. As you guys can probably tell, I've got mine set up to be more of a rally car right now because I was doing some off-roading. However, you can go for a full street build with this car as well, so whatever you want to do with it, it can pretty much do. It makes a very, very solid rally car. It also makes a really good street racing car. This thing can pretty much do it all. It has great acceleration, it has pretty good handling. The only thing is it does tend to have some understeer unless you put this thing into a drift. But if you put it into a drift, it will go around pretty much any corner as fast as you possibly want it to. The Sultan RS Classic is definitely another one of my favorite cars from the Tuners DLC. It is really, really quick, it sounds great, and again, it has lots and lots of customization options, so you can make it very unique. Overall, the Sultan RS Classic is definitely one of the better cars to pick up on this list, hence it being a little bit lower down on the list. Definitely look into this thing if you guys are interested in Subarus or Evos. I would say that this thing is more based off of a Subaru, but again, argue amongst yourselves in the comments. Tell me if I'm wrong, tell me if I'm right. So that's pretty much it for the Sultan RS Classic. It's time to move on to number 3. Next up at number 3, we have the Jester Classic. Yes, this thing has moved up quite a bit since the last JDM cars video that I made. Many of you will have seen that, and many of you will have known that I am not the biggest fan of the Jester Classic until recently. If you saw my customization that I just did on this car, you will know that I was actually very impressed by how the car performs now. Of course, this is one of the cars that had engine resistance when it first came out, but now it has since been a little bit fixed. Now it's not perfect, but it is a lot better than it ever was. So I've actually decided that I do like the Jester Classic quite a lot. I always said that I would like this thing a lot more if it just didn't have engine resistance, and hence it is a little bit higher on the list now. Now the Jester Classic goes for about $800,000 off of Legendary Motorsport. For the price, it is a very, very good performing vehicle now. Before, it was an absolute ripoff, but now it is genuinely a very good car. It has good handling, the acceleration is pretty decent. The top speed is still a little bit weak due to that engine resistance, but it's not terrible, that's for sure. The Jester Classic has lots of customization, and obviously, as I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody, this thing is based off of the legendary Toyota Supra. So obviously, the Jester Classic comes equipped with 10 trillion horsepower. Stock, without even upgrading this thing, you don't even need to put an EMS upgrade on it. It has 10 trillion horsepower to begin with. So the Supra, I mean, everybody knows it's an incredible car. It's definitely worth picking up in GTA Online. I would say that this thing is actually good now, and I would honestly recommend picking it up if you guys don't have one already. So that's pretty much it for the Jester Classic. It's time to move on to car number 2. Next up, we have the LSG Retro Custom. Now, the LSG Retro Custom is a really, really customizable car in GTA Online, and it definitely deserves to be pretty high on this list. It's also one of the better performing JDM cars in the entire game, so that is another great feature about it. Now, in order to get yourself one of these, you're gonna have to pick up a free LSG RH8 on either Legendary Motorsport or the Benny's Original Motorworks website. Then you're gonna have to take it to Benny's or a custom auto shop and upgrade it into the LSG Retro Custom for just over $900,000. So this thing is a little bit on the more expensive side, but it's still pretty cheap compared to a lot of the other cars on this list, that's for sure. And it pretty much outperforms everything else on the list as well. The LSG Retro Custom is obviously an all-wheel drive vehicle because it's based off of an older Nissan Skyline GTR. Now there's a lot of debate if this thing's the R32, R33, or the R34, and I think a lot of it depends on your customization options that you choose. I'm not going to say what I think it is because it's going to just cause an argument in the comments. But you guys can argue amongst yourselves yet again about which variant of the Nissan Skyline this thing is based off of. It has really good acceleration, it has pretty good handling, it makes a really good sound, and of course it has lots and lots of customization options. So the LSG Retro Custom, as I'm sure most of you probably know, is a fantastic car to own in Grand Theft Auto Online and is definitely one of the better JDM cars in the entire game. So that's pretty much it for the LSG Retro Custom. It's time to talk about the car at number 1. And at number 1 we have the ZR350, which is of course the Mazda RX7 in real life. This thing goes for just over $1.2 million, and for that price you do get one of the most customizable cars in the entire game, and also my favorite Japanese car from the Tuners DLC. This thing has so much that you can do to it. You can pretty much make your RX7 look different than anybody else's in the entire game because it just has that many different options. Obviously the RX7 is a pretty iconic Japanese car in real life, and it's very, very sought after, so why wouldn't you want to pick one up in GTA? Now, is it the best JDM car in terms of performance? No, probably not. But I think in terms of community hype and how much people like the RX7, I think this thing deserves to be at number 1. It also has very good performance as well, I must say. The handling is pretty good, the acceleration is decent as well, and the top speed is okay as well. Overall, the ZR350 is definitely my favorite Japanese car in the game currently as it stands. I'm sure in due time Rockstar will add more Japanese cars into the game that are going to surpass this thing on my list, but for right now I think that this is the number 1 JDM/Japanese car in Grand Theft Auto Online for me personally, and I think a lot of you are probably going to agree with me, but there's also going to be a lot of you who are definitely going to disagree with me, but we'll just have to agree to disagree. So guys, that's it for my top 10 Japanese/JDM cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Let me know what you thought of my list in the comments down below. Comment your favorite car of mine as well. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you didn't. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.